I still remember the exact moment my mother let go of my hand. Not when I was a child. Not when I moved out. But on my wedding day, standing outside the church in my white dress, while rain poured down my face and my parents drove away without me. And the worst part? They didn't even look back. I stood there shaking, clutching my bouquet so tightly the roses snapped in my hands. Guests stared. My makeup ran down my cheeks. My fiancé kept calling my phone over and over. But I couldn't answer. Because in that moment, something inside me broke forever. My name is Elena. I was 30 years old when it happened, and until that day, I spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' love. I know how pathetic that sounds. But when you grow up unwanted, you become addicted to approval. My parents adored my younger brother, Mason. Everything in our family revolved around him. His football games. His grades. His problems. His future. I was just there. The reliable daughter. The quiet daughter. The daughter who never caused trouble because she knew nobody would come for her anyway. When I got accepted into college, my mother barely smiled. When Mason got suspended for fighting, they hired him a private tutor and bought him a car to cheer him up. That was my family. Still, I kept trying. I helped pay bills when Dad lost his job. I drove Mom to doctor appointments. I skipped vacations to babysit Mason's kids after his divorce. Every single time I thought, maybe now they'll finally see me. They never did. Then I met Daniel. And for the first time in my life, someone chose me first. Daniel wasn't flashy or rich. He was calm. Steady. The kind of man who noticed tiny things. The first time I got sick around him, he showed up with soup and medicine without being asked. You don't have to do everything alone anymore, he told me. I almost cried right there in his apartment kitchen. When he proposed 2 years later, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. I truly believed my wedding day would finally be the day my parents acted like they loved me. God, I was stupid. 3 weeks before the wedding, my mother started acting strange. She ignored my calls. Cancelled dress fittings. Snapped at me over tiny things. Then one night she finally exploded. You're selfish, she said coldly over dinner. I blinked at her. What? This wedding. The timing. Everything. I stared in disbelief. Mom, you helped choose the date. That was before Mason lost his job. There it was again. Always Mason. I felt anger rising in my chest. What does that have to do with my wedding? Dad sighed dramatically. Your brother is struggling, Elena. We can't focus on parties right now. Parties? I whispered. I'm getting married. My mother folded her arms. Honestly, a courthouse ceremony would have been enough. I looked around the table, suddenly feeling 12 years old again. Invisible. Humiliated. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, but even he looked shocked. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. But Daniel kissed my forehead and whispered, after we're married, they don't get to hurt you anymore. I wanted to believe him. The morning of the wedding started beautifully. Sunlight streamed through the hotel windows. My bridesmaids laughed while helping me into my dress. For the first time in weeks, I felt happy. Then my father called. Elena, he said flatly, your mother and I are running late. How late? Silence. Then, we may not make it. My stomach dropped. What do you mean you may not make it? Mason had an emergency. I felt cold all over. Dad, my wedding starts in 40 minutes. He needs us. And I don't? Another silence. Then he said the words I will never forget. Don't make this harder than it already is. The call ended. I just stood there staring at my phone while my bridesmaids watched in horror. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later and found me crying in the bridal suite. "They're not coming," I choked out. His face darkened instantly. "What?" "They chose Mason again." I expected Daniel to comfort me. Instead, he became terrifyingly calm. He crouched in front of me and said quietly, "Then let them lose you." Those words changed my life. Because suddenly, something clicked in my head. Why was I still begging people to love me? Why was I still destroying myself for parents who abandoned me emotionally years ago? So I wiped my tears, fixed my makeup, and walked down the aisle alone. Every guest stood when I entered the church. I heard whispers immediately. "Where are her parents?" Oh my God. I could feel the humiliation burning through me. But then I saw Daniel waiting at the altar. And when he looked at me, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. The ceremony was beautiful despite everything. Actually, maybe because of everything. For once, I stopped chasing people who didn't care. After the wedding, my phone exploded with messages from relatives. "Your poor parents are overwhelmed. Mason really needed them. You should try to understand." I nearly threw my phone across the room. Understand what? That my own parents abandoned their daughter on the biggest day of her life? But the real twist came 3 days later. My Aunt Linda called me secretly. "Elena," she whispered, "you deserve to know the truth." My chest tightened. What truth? Mason never had an emergency. I froze. What? He was drunk, she said bitterly. Your parents skipped your wedding because Mason got arrested after crashing his motorcycle. I felt physically sick. They chose him over me, again? It gets worse, she whispered. Apparently, my parents spent the money they promised for my wedding gift paying Mason's legal fees. Thousands of dollars. Money they claimed they couldn't afford. I sat on the kitchen floor shaking with rage while Daniel listened beside me. For 30 years, I defended them. For 30 years, I told myself they did their best. But no. They chose him every single time because they wanted to. That night, I blocked my parents' numbers. No dramatic message. No screaming. Nothing. I simply disappeared from their lives the same way they disappeared from mine. Months passed. For the first time ever, my life became peaceful. Daniel and I moved to another city. I started therapy. I learned what healthy love looked like. And slowly, I stopped waiting for my parents to become different people. Then came twist number 2. Almost a year later, my father showed up at my office unexpectedly. I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted. Older. Elena, he said quietly. I felt nothing. No warmth. No excitement. Just emptiness. What do you want? His eyes filled with tears immediately. We need help. Of course they did. Mason had drained their savings completely. Multiple DUIs. Gambling debts. Rehab. More arrests. The golden child finally destroyed everything. Dad admitted they were close to losing their house. And then he said something that made me laugh out loud. We thought family takes care of each other. Family. The same word they ignored when abandoning me at the altar. I looked him directly in the eyes and asked, "Did you think about family when Mom drove away from my wedding?" His face crumbled instantly. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine shame. I made mistakes, he whispered. No, I said calmly. You made choices. He started crying. Actually crying. But I didn't comfort him. Because nobody comforted me while I stood outside that church abandoned and humiliated. Then came the final twist. As my father prepared to leave, he handed me a small envelope. Your mother wanted you to have this. Inside was a letter. Not an apology. A confession. My hand shook while reading it. My mother admitted she always resented me because I reminded her of the years she felt trapped and unhappy. I was born during a time when their marriage was collapsing, and somewhere deep inside herself, she blamed me for it. None of it was my fault. But she punished me for it anyway. For 30 years. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But abandoning you on your wedding day was the moment I realized what kind of mother I became. And I think losing you is the punishment I earned." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I folded the letter carefully and put it away. Not because I forgave her, but because I was finally free. A month later, my parents lost the house. Mason disappeared after stealing money from them again. And suddenly the daughter they ignored for decades became the one person they desperately wanted back. Too late. People think revenge is screaming. Or humiliation. Or making someone suffer. But sometimes the most painful revenge is simply moving on peacefully without them. Today, I'm 34. I have a husband who loves me. A little daughter who will never question whether she matters. And a life built without my parents in it. Sometimes I still think about that rainy afternoon outside the church. About watching their car disappear while I stood there broken in my wedding dress. Back then, it felt like the worst moment of my life. But honestly, it was the moment my real life finally began.